Welcome to the Black Knight Nation podcast. I'm your host, Sal Internado. The Black Knight Nation podcast is sponsored by Higher Echelon. Higher Echelon is a consulting firm founded by Joe Ross, former Army fullback, former Army assistant coach, and former Army officer. And we appreciate Higher Echelon sponsoring this podcast. And we're going to bring in one of the greats of Army football. When you talk Army football and when you talk about Army's past, we're going to bring in the great Mike Mayweather. Mike, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
No problem. No problem.
You know, I was doing a little research on you. Of course, I going back to my beat writing days, I knew every stat on Mike Mayweather, right? So I needed a refresher today, right? Because it's been a while.
All right. Time is flying.
It's been a while. We're going to add Steve Anderson in here right now. Hey, we have Steve here. Hey, Steve, we have the great Mike Mayweather joining the podcast today.
Man, when I was 18 years old and I remember hearing about Mike Mayweather as a young Prepster cadet being, talking to guys like Pat Mealy and Kingsley Ahee. And, man, sir, it's great to catch up with you and let you know, just before, we really get into it. You were one of the people we all looked up to as 18-year-old young men just starting at the prep school. So appreciate everything you did for the legacy of Army football, and it's good to finally catch up.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Steve. And don't call me sir. I'm Mike.
All right. Back, kind of habit. So, but
okay.
Mike,
I know.
It's great. It's great to have you on here.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely look forward to hearing the story.
Okay.
Let's get this out of the way first, Steve. We're going to get all his accolades out of the way first because, like I said, I did some research and 4,299 career rushing yards, most in Army history, 21 100-yard games, 37 career rushing touchdowns. Now, Mike, 10th in the Heisman Trophy voting your senior year. I think you're probably the last Army football player to ever receive a Heisman vote.
I think the most surprising thing about that is I actually got some first place votes. So.
Three first place Heisman votes, Steve. Three.
Now, you know what though? If I had finished higher in the class with my class ranking as a student, I probably would have been higher in the Heisman. But hey, they didn't have a story. So,
Steve, finalist for the Doak Walker Award. Yeah. 3 1,000-yard seasons consecutively, sophomore, junior, and senior year. What am I missing here? First team All-American. Wow, Mike. Yeah. And then how we usually start this podcast is how you got to West Point. What's your story on how Army got the greatest running back in modern day Army history?
That is an interesting story because honestly, from pure recruiting, I should not have been at West Point. I actually, from just pure recruiting, probably should have gone to the University of Missouri because they did. I mean, they really did a good job of recruiting me. Actually, in hindsight, I found out, and actually, I don't know. I guess Jay Robertson would not have been there with you, Steve. I think you're a little younger. But Jay Robertson was he was the coach that recruited our area. And he and I became friends, really good friends after I graduated and whatnot or what have you. But in his own words, he was not that sold on me. And in fact, my understanding is that the football team was not going to tag me as one of their football players in the for admissions. Now, I was initially. I mean, I went to a private high school in St. Louis, actually one of the more exclusive high schools in the St. Louis area, and so the academics were extremely strong, and I was a pretty good student. Didn't test well on the SATs, and that was one of the questions from an admission standpoint. But I wasn't going to the prep school, not because there was something wrong with the prep school. I just didn't understand the real connection with the prep school. And it was to me like an automatic loss of a first year, which is what it was, and that's not really what I wanted to do. But what really wound up happening was I learned what the recruiting game was really about. And what I mean is, of course, coming out of high school, I'm 5'7", 185 pounds. There's not a lot of schools interested in that. And so at the beginning of the recruiting process, I was, I was all state 3 years in the state of Missouri and all metro, and had a bunch of accolades in the area. But again, the size came into play. So I got looks early, but as people signed, folks walked away. I was, at one time being recruited by Notre Dame, by Stanford. And I'll tell you what happened was, I started getting bumped upside the head through the recruiting process. What happened, first thing, Stanford, I actually wanted to go to Stanford. My high school buddy, my best friend in high school, Turner Bauer, they were recruiting both of us. But the week of my visit, they dropped me. They dropped me from the recruiting list, and they never contacted me. They actually sent a letter to my high school football coach telling him that they would continue to recruit Turner, but they weren't interested in me. They had another back in their system, similar to me, so they weren't interested. So after that, it was Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech had offered me a scholarship. However, and this is an interesting story, and it just kind of tells you how things kind of go full circle. Bill Curry was the head coach at Georgia Tech, and his staff was the staff that offered me the scholarship. However, I don't know if you guys remember, he left Georgia Tech that year and went to coach at Alabama, who we played against in the Sun Bowl. So I actually played against his staff at the Sun Bowl when we played them, and I guess that was '88. Now, when I went, I still took so things were really kind of up in the air with Georgia Tech, and that's who I was really resolved to go to at that point. But I went to my visit for Georgia Tech, and I don't know if you guys remember Bobby Christian. He was a fullback for the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. He was a running back in high school, and he was actually all metro with me in St. Louis. And so we actually took our visit on the same weekend. We got there, and of course, who's the new head coach at Georgia Tech that year? Bobby Ross. So Bobby Ross takes over, and of course, I think their first week was the week of my visit, and they of course had no idea who I was. And what's interesting, and it's just the nature of the beast. They were Bobby and I, when we were on our, they didn't know who he was either. It actually, when we kind of compared notes on the flight home. And so, of course, he actually winds up going to Northwestern, who we play against my sophomore year. I missed that game, but he was there. And, so it's kind of interesting how things go full circle. But so at that point, I was really just kind of, shaking. I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And like I said, Army, it's not like I was getting calls, every other week, every 2 weeks, in a month. You know what? In fact, I did not see Coach Robertson until he came up. He actually came up to watch film with me after once I got admitted. That's when he actually looked at film of me, and he admitted that to me after the fact. So what really wound up happening, what was left on the board for me, was the University of Missouri. I had actually taken a visit to Cornell and the University of Penn, and of course, they were very interested. But what really pushed me to West Point was two things. Number one, coming from the high school. See, at that time, the University of Missouri had a lot of problems recruiting the St. Louis area. And basically, I didn't go to Missouri because nobody at my school wanted me to go to Missouri. It was like, you know what, you got an opportunity. And I had my mentor in St. Louis, and we'll get to that story if you guys like. He was, very, very helpful to me in sitting down and kind of talking about my options, my real options. And so that was one of the reasons that pushed me to West Point. And the other reason was I wanted to play Division I football. And I said to myself, you know what, the whole recruiting thing was a wake up call to me. And I said to myself, I better have options in my life. And so that's why I went to West Point. And actually, and once again, another Mayweather myth. All of my classmates tried to say, I walked into West Point, glittering and the big recruit. The very first, I was at the low end of the depth chart when I first got there. And I know that because the very first person that I went up against when we started, fall practice was Greg Gatson. And Greg Gatson coming in the senior year was, he was the man. So that tells me where I was. Now, what I say to them, no, I started at the depth chart and low in the depth chart. I wasn't there very long, but but that's where I started.
Mike, what I like hearing, and we hear it from so many Army football players, is almost it creates the recruiting process almost creates a chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, it did. Yeah,
where you got at one point Notre Dame's talking to you in '88. Shit, Notre Dame was winning a national championship, right?
Right. And what's interesting is Bobby Ross wins the national championship at 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 Georgia Tech, and I would have been there possibly. So,
and just like you, I had a great GPA, Mike. I didn't test very well. So another similarity that we see a lot of in a lot of football players, but you talking about options, right? And I'd love to hear the story in a minute about the mentor and how options when you graduate is everything when you become a man, right? And at 18 years old, right, Mike, you're talking about, I'm going pro. I'm playing at Georgia Tech. I'm playing at
right.
I don't need options. Like I have my plan A, right? Plan B is plan A. Again, a lot of those same, it's funny because me and you are, 15 years apart, but, we're hearing all the same stuff.
Well, you know what? I guess what's the amazing thing is the process really hasn't changed much. Didn't change much when I was there. Between the 15 years between you and me, hasn't changed too much either. I mean, they're doing some different things, but at the end of the day, the process still is pretty much the same, which is it's a numbers game for them.
Yep.
They go out and talk to all these young kids and tell them all of these different things, but at the end of the day, you're a number, you're a part of a pecking order, a pecking system. And you know what? If you, as an individual growing up, making decisions, put your trust in that kind of system, most are going to be disappointed because once again, what's the percentage of guys who make it to the next level? 2 or 3%.
I like your story about how everybody said you were glittering when you came in and you were automatically the Mike Mayweather we know.
Right.
I remember, I think my freshman year, this is after prep school too. So mind you, I had a year that everybody kind of knew the linebacker, Steve Anderson from the prep school. They were just waiting to see what he did. I was on, we had depth chart.
Now, where are you from? Where did you play high school football?
I played in Maryland, Mike.
In Maryland? Okay.
Yeah. So I was part of me and Pat Mealy played, 40 minutes from each other. But we had 220 guys on our fall roster my freshman year. And we had A through I.
Yep.
Okay? And Mike, I walked in that locker room and mind you, I was like, okay, I'm finally here. It's time to make the change. Like we're going to start winning. right?
Right.
And I'm on I, Mike. I never felt so disrespected in my life.
Right.
And
You know what?
It took one toss play side, and I screwed everything up. And then I was on C.
There you go.
The very next day. So
it's interesting you say that, Steve, because probably for me, the best thing I didn't understand how their depth charts work. So of course it didn't, it didn't sink in where I really was. So, and what's funny is just like what you just said, Greg Gatson, actually Greg was my host when I actually took my visit to West Point. And so when you know what, I went up against him twice, and I whacked him pretty good. And I just, after that, it was the old Jay White, get him out of here. So yeah, but no, exactly, Steve. I hear you.
So, Mike, if you would kind of talk to us about that conversation, that sit down with the mentor, because from Maryland, when I played ball in Maryland did a lot of like, hey, you're from Maryland, here's your offer, and that's it. We're not going to spend a lot of time whining and dining you. And a lot of Maryland players didn't go to the University of Maryland. They ended up at Penn State or West Virginia or schools around Maryland to where they saw them, but didn't go to Maryland because Maryland didn't really wine and dine football players from Maryland. What they did was they really just took it for granted. Like, hey, you're from Maryland. We're going to offer you. We expect you to come here. And that was kind of the mentality we got when I went through high school football in Maryland. So you talking about Missouri, you're from St. Louis, like, you would believe a player like that from Missouri, you're trying to go there, right? You want to play ball for your home state, but it's just your mentor sits you down and he talks to you. Let me give you some wisdom here. So what was that conversation like?
Well, I guess I have to start at the beginning with that one. So it'll be a long story. But I think it'll be well worth it. I have to kind of even give you an idea of how he became. It's an amazing story, and it's a testament to the triune God that we serve. I've been put in a lot of different situations in my life, and I give thanks to God because He's given me a disposition that has allowed me to see things beyond. He's given me wisdom and insight beyond beyond where I am age wise, or where I was and whatnot. And then this has been through all of my life. So he's always put me in situations and put people in my life that have always been a driving force for me. And as I go through this story and I go, as we kind of talk through the night, I go, but by the grace of the Lord, but by His grace and His mercy. And at the end of the day, it has been His hands that have guided me through all of this. I could never, and I'll just kind of go through the story, and then we'll kind of come circle back to it. But I grew up in the inner city of St. Louis, one of 10. One very typical urban family, very poor. Again, the youngest boy of 10. I do have a younger sister. I was actually a product from grades from kindergarten to 8th grade of the St. Louis public school system, which is pretty typical of most big school districts today. I was a very good student, and a couple of teachers recognized that at my 8th grade school, and so they just kind of pushed me to look at other options at going through high school. And so I actually looked at St. Louis Country Day School, which is the school that I went to. Again, I didn't know much about it until I actually went through the whole process. Did my interview, saw the campus. I'd never seen anything like it before. So I was convinced to go there, and I understand I'm a poor, poor black kid going to a uh, uh, very affluent high school in St. Louis, prep school in St. Louis. And I tell this story, and my situation was one of those where, my first year and a half, I actually caught the Metro bus to school. And uh, anytime during that first year and a half, I could have stepped off that bus and not gone to school, and it wouldn't have mattered to anybody. And I would have been just another statistic, another young, most of the guys that I went to grade school with, a lot of them, I mean, let's face it, 70% of them are either dead or in jail. That's the kind of situation I grew up in. So I get to Country Day, and they had no idea. I started playing football when I was 9 years old. I was a really good football player. I mean, I just it's been more, not so much talent, but just a will and a disposition. I've never considered myself. I think more than being a running back, I've always thought of myself as a good football player. And the fact of the matter is, I actually, if I was the size that I am now, I was that big. I've been this big since 7th grade. I just stopped growing. So I always fashioned myself as being a linebacker. I mean, that's really what I wanted to do. And I actually believe the Missouri Tigers were looking at me as from a defensive standpoint, and I think that's why Coach Robertson wasn't all that thrilled, because I mean I was a good running back, but I was a great football player. I was all state, both offense and defense, my junior year. So I mean, either way, that's kind of what. So at the end of the day, yes, it's being a football player that I was, and that's how I played running back. I played running back as an angry linebacker. So, but anyway, so I get to Country Day. They had no idea about my football, about who I was as a football player. They literally, I got there from a recommendation of my grade school counselor, once again, just based on academics, and so I got there. I did not play the entire my entire freshman year on the varsity. I got brought up pretty much right around the playoffs. But what pretty much happened to me was T-Bow. Actually, I became very good friends with Turner Bauer, and actually Turner went on again to go to Stanford, and he actually wound up getting drafted by the New England Patriots in the 6th round. I can't remember what year. I want to say it was maybe 94 or 95. But we had a lot of things in common. And what really happened was he and I can't say it was really about me, because his dad, who was a prominent real estate developer, Edward T. Bauer, he was a prominent real estate developer in St. Louis, and I'm not the only young black kid that he had tried to mentor. It just so happened that our relationship grew closer and stronger than some of the other young men that he had tried to mentor. And literally it became not exactly like, but pretty close to the same kind of scenario that happened with the movie The Blind Side, with the tackle from Baltimore. They invited me into their home, basically pretty much made me a member of their family. And this lasted from my time at Country Day, actually up until recently, although up until pretty much almost today, not so much the last few years, because things have happened and we kind of life happens and we kind of a little bit distance there. But make no bones about it, I am the father, the husband, uh, uh, that I am the man that I am today because of their influence. And literally when we sat down and talked, it was about what's real. Like you were saying, Steve, we kind of grew up with this idea of of these lights in your eyes, and we there's a reality to the world, and it's very easy for young high schoolers to to get pushed away from what's real and pushed into this make believe world. And at the end of the day, that conversation was just that, Mike. You gotta understand what's real. Look at your situation. What's going to be the best situation for you. The other side of it too was, my family didn't have any money to send me off to school anywhere. I couldn't, one of the big things about college football players is that, what, if you don't have any boosters helping you, what, life on campus can be pretty rough. And being coming from a poor background, I was destined for that. So what he really did was just re-emphasize what was going through my mind, and really just kind of showed me, Mike, be real about what you're doing. And at the end of the day, uh, forget about all of it's about truth. You've got to understand the way things really are. And when you do that and you make your decisions based on that, you know what, that's when you make good decisions.
That's really, yeah. I'm a huge Baltimore Ravens fan, so obviously
Mm-hmm.
I know the Mike Lore story.
Right.
But it's pretty cool to kind of hear from someone that has, we kind of walk the same line, Mike. I'm just a few steps behind, and really cool. It's hard as an 18-year-old young man, to have any kind of perspective on any of that. So,
Yeah.
And like you said, like, thank goodness that man was there in your life for those years, because who knows where you would have ended up had, that not happened.
Right.
And had it been a different person or no person at all.
No person. Let me tell you, still, I have to add to it. I never knew a father. He basically the closest thing to a father I've ever known in this world. And I said, back to what you were saying again, I give thanks to God because he has he's given me a disposition to be able to man, I can't tell you what it really, his hands have been on me, and he has given me and instilled an attitude and a disposition that allows for those kind of things, and has allowed for people to really step in and be a help to me, and I just, man, what a God we serve.
Yeah, I think I mean, you get nothing but concurrence on that from me. I've definitely had my fair share of stepping on my own toe before, and coming out stronger on the other hand, and just kind of realizing that it was just another test to make me a better person, better husband.
Amen.
So I 100% agree on that, Mike. And so you sit down, you have that conversation. He allows you to kind of see, the right, the right, wrong, whatever, but you make your decision now. You're coming to West Point. And, I have to imagine a guy like you, kind of that linebacker, running back mentality. Like, you're coming in, you're doing beast barracks. All you're trying to do is get to the football field. And
you know.
right? Just, You're gonna walk with your hands cupped. You're gonna wear whatever they tell you to wear. I'll wear black shoes. I'll shine my boots. Just put the football in my hand, and all
Steve,
right with the world again.
Right, Steve, you know how that works. That whole core squad, the core squad.
Yeah, I remember.
That's your model to death.
I'll never forget. I showed up, and the first question I asked was, "Hey, when's football practice?" And the leadership is just hounding me like, "Who do you think you are? What are you talking about? You think you came here to play football? Just start yelling at me." I'm like, "Well, like that's why you brought me here. Like, that's the only reason why I got into this school. Like, calm down." And I had to go talk to a major, my TAC officer, and like, hey, you'll get to play football, but first, we got to get you into the culture of what it's like to be a West Pointer.
Right,
like,
Steve.
Man, I don't remember them saying anything like that.
Trust me, I understand. And you know what, fact, Steve? I think I had that. I think I had that attitude probably up until a week before graduation.
That's cool.
Man, we could talk about Mike. Great, thanks for telling us your story about West Point and growing up where you grew up and what led you to kind of be the man you are today. If we can just get a little bit to your playing career, right? I mean, I know we said that at the beginning. We said all your accolades, but I mean, from what I'm hearing from you, right? I mean, freshman year, you get your opportunities, and then it just takes off. But I want to ask you about first, maybe what that was like. Just you started low but jumped right up on the depth chart. Your first maybe fondest memory of your Army career, and then it seemed like down the road you would be a guy who like the younger running backs could look up to, right? I mean, as you grew up, that leadership. Steve talked about this too. That leadership grows, right? And then that the running backs that came under you that were younger, how you mentored them.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, once again, like you said earlier, Steve, I came in with all the stuff from recruiting. I did come in with a chip on my shoulder. But you know what? At the end of the day, man, this was a story. I mean, you know what? A young kid from inner city of St. Louis coming into West Point and doing what he did. I couldn't write this script. I mean, I couldn't write it better. But what happened? It's just got it really was a lot of being at the right place at the right time. I did when we came out of going into the season plebe year, I was third on the depth chart, and I actually scored a touchdown against my first game against Holy Cross. But what really, really happened was, I don't know if you guys remember Torrey Crawford. Torrey Crawford was was my plebe year quarterback, and he was a highly touted quarterback. In fact, there was Heisman consideration talk about him when he was coming in, and I'll relate. It's the funniest thing. Tell the story when we were going into the start of the season, and of course, Torrey was the focus, and Coach Young comes. He basically pulls all the running backs to the side, and he goes, it was all if you don't learn how to block, you can't play in this offense. And so at that point, we understood, hey, we got to take care of Torrey. But at any rate, about 4 games in, Torrey tears up his knee. And so we go through about 4 or 5 quarterbacks. And part of the problem was because of the quarterback situation, we had a tough time running the triple option. And I did start the second game of the season, my plebe year, but that was more because of injuries. But I became a full-time starter after Torrey went down because I had a little bit more speed than everybody else. And so that was how we were going to, attack the perimeter. I mean, just literally just trying to get a little bit more speed out there. And what ultimately winds up happening is, of course, I get more experience, get more comfortable. I actually, I finished plebe year with like 742 yards. So, and let's see, the reality of it is, if I play all of plebe year, I may well have had, 4 1,000-yard seasons. But you know what? Everything kind of fell together. Uh, you know, uh, geez, honestly, through it all, the plebe year was the most fun year because I mean, it was like a fairy tale. I mean, because I didn't expect those things to happen, and as time goes on, a lot more people start to follow you. You get a little bit more pressure. I was freewheeling it. I was having a great time, and it's funny because I tell the story. My best Army Navy game was my plebe year, and it was literally because that was my most relaxed. I started the game. I was literally um, joking around with Jim Young, and the Friday practice before the football game, Army Navy at Vet Stadium. You know how you do your walkthroughs and everything. So I was really really kind of a free spirit, and he kind of mentioned it after the game. It's like, wow, my God, you were so relaxed, and he kind of hit him in a way, just kind of making it all go into perspective. But that was literally my best game because I was just freewheeling, and every other Army Navy game, it's like, oh my God, it's Navy. We gotta beat Navy. So yeah, I plebe year. I mean, it was. I mean, man, it was. I mean, you just couldn't. Again, you couldn't write a better script.
Hey, Steve, real quick, could you imagine Mike Mayweather in this era with social media and the highlights all over the place? And
Oh
just
my goodness,
it would be
man!
you would be a Heisman Trophy candidate every year. It would be crazy, right? Steve, there'd be clips all over the place. His personality. I mean, it would be insane.
I know he'd probably be on ESPN Top 10 quite a bit. For sure.
Well,
me and you would be retweeting and tweeting throughout the games as middle for another 90-yard sprint.
no, that wouldn't happen under JY.
I have to kind of go back to something because it's one, it's kind of like what kind of makes Army football different is the brotherhood that you have from your freshman, to see it grow to your sophomore, to see some guys fall off, right? You don't start with everybody that you finish with. And you having Greg Gadsden as a kind of senior leader when you're a freshman, and kind of showing you what leadership, dedication, commitment, and how to be a peer leader on a team of leaders, right? We're all leaders on that team, and trying to be a leader amongst leaders, as Colonel Gene Polka used to tell me, when he gave me my counseling as a captain under his team, and kind of talk about how you went from kind of like the follower to the leader throughout your career, and how you adjusted kind of your style.
You know what, Steve? You really pretty much kind of hit on it in that you develop a brotherhood, and when you care about the people you play with, you want to see them do well. Your natural leadership ability is going to come out. At the end of the day, what did I do, Steve? I just wanted to be excellent at what I did, and I wanted to make sure everybody else, was excellent as well. The biggest thing that I did for the underclass running backs, in the running back room, was to basically let them know, you know what, you can do what I can do. you know what, I'm here, and you're gonna have to do it better than I can, because I ain't giving up my spot. But at the end of the day, you know what, you can accomplish what I did. And I think what I would say is that in our backfield, and of course, we back in the day, the running backs set the pace for the football teams. Oh, we like to believe,
Yeah.
but but that's really what it was. And pushing making these guys understand. Hey, you know what? First of all, you got to do it, because you know what? It may come to call, but you can do what I can do, and carrying enough to push them to be the best that they can be, and push them, not let them, the one thing that's very easy to do for most anybody is feel sorry for yourself. Oh, I'm not the starting running back. Oh, no. You know what, dude? You're not starting. That means you got to go and work a little harder. And they take that to heart, when you're genuine about it. So
Yeah, you wanted to talk to Steve. Before you came on, Mike and I were talking a little bit about what happened, life after West Point for him, which was a unique situation, and how basically a lot of what was written for Service Academy players to go into the pros was based on Mike a little bit. So maybe Mike, you can tell us a little bit of what we were talking about earlier with the NFL and what you did after West Point, right? Because you think that the career that you had, Mike, right, you'd be destined to play in the NFL, but times were different than they are right now.
Well, yeah. I guess the best way to tell the story is just to kind of talk about what happened after West Point. Of course, I stayed on as a graduate assistant coach, and I don't know if you remember Mark Dawkins. Mark Dawkins was our tight end, class of '92, and he was a prototype tight end. He had the body, he had good speed, and so a lot of scouts were looking at him, NFL scouts. He actually, what's another interesting story that kind of shows you how the world go around. Mark goes to the NFL Combine, and he actually winds up meeting and I won't say befriending, because they didn't spend a whole lot of time. My buddy Turner, because Turner was a tight end at Stanford, and so they were at the Combine together. But during that time, what basically was happening was scouts were coming up, looking at Dawkins, and they would ask me, basically what my situation was, and kind of, where I was and whatnot, what have you. And what happened was, I don't know if you remember Carlton Jones. Not Carlton Jones. Now, geez, I can't think of his name. He was actually the GA when I was a plebe. He was class of, I want to say, maybe 86 or 87. It'll come to me. But he was a running back. Clarence Jones. Okay.
Clarence Jones, right? Clarence Jones.
Yeah. He was a running back, and he actually had gotten out on a VERP for his class, and he was trying to get a look in the NFL, and so we were kind of talking about what he was going through. And then I don't know if you guys remember Napoleon McCallum from Navy.
Yep.
He was actually playing. I mean, he had done, I think, 2 years of his commitment, but the Navy was actually allowing him to play football and be in the Navy at the same time. So all of these things are going on, and so I'm like, okay, because when I graduated, and actually junior year, when you step in and they go, "Welcome to the Army," I pretty much said to myself at that point, I've got 5 years, and you know what, if it works from there, so be it. But I was kind of resolved to, that I had that commitment to go. But that kind of what was in that backdrop, I was like, okay, maybe there is a possibility So I go. My mentor actually lined up an agent for me. Actually, what is his name? Harold Lewis. He who actually was a big agent in St. Louis at the time, represented a few of the players, and actually represented a lot of Rams players when they came to St. Louis. But anyway, and so I kind of discussed the situation. That's actually how I wound up in Canada. I actually did spend 3 weeks with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and basically what he did was, we kind of discussed the whole paper, what was going on with the paperwork, and he placed a few calls around, and so the Tiger Cats were interested, even though I basically just started my process of getting out of the army, which was basically doing the paperwork. I literally, kind of examined what Napoleon McCallum was doing, and so when I fashioned my paperwork, I fashioned it after that. That was my model, and so so I literally worked out on my own my battery. I was field artillery, and so my battery commander was he was actually an ROTC guy, really cool. The change of command was a West Point guy who wasn't so cool, which part of another reason why I kind of it was the emphasis to really go after it. That's so. But so I submitted my paperwork, and it was initially basically as an exception to policy because it hadn't been done. Nobody had done it. And so that whole process literally took me a year and a half.
Wow. Wow.
Took me a year and a half. And so, and basically what I did during that time, I had my liaison, another guy who was so instrumental in me getting to West Point, Bob Pickle. He was my liaison officer for admissions into West Point, but he was actually a lawyer and had actually represented a few football players, and so basically what we did, he had some he had his Rolodex basically, and so after the whole Tiger Cat thing, I pretty much kind of came back. I came to the realization that, at this point, because let me tell you, football in Canada is not the same thing. In fact, it's what was interesting to me was they actually had guys who would play, and it was most of the American guys that were there in Canada. It was a job to them. I mean, it was real, and it was what they focused on. The Canadian guys, oh no, they were going to work and then coming to practice, and so you had that kind of dynamic going, and it was. I was like, oh no, and so when I got back to Fort Sill and really started working on this thing and trying to kind of put it, I realized at that point to myself that I just want a shot. And so it wasn't about Canada anymore. It was just having that shot at the NFL to see where I was. And so I won't say I fired him. I fired Harold. It was just that we just kind of drifted. And at that point, I figured, you know what? If it's going to be, it's going to be me. And so I literally sent tape out to people. I sent letters around and talking to folks, and I actually think the Eagles brought me in more as a publicity thing too, because people in Philadelphia were probably familiar with Mike Mayweather, so versus someone else, and so I think that was a part of it too, and I do think that they were genuinely interested in seeing where I was, but I think that was also a part of it. But I appreciate everything that they did. So I go, so I'm working through the paperwork thing, and I guess this was May of is it 93 maybe? Yeah, I think it was May of 93. Time starts to roll in when you get old like me all together. The Army said they were going to release me, and so that's when I pretty much got hooked up with the Eagles. But of course, even that process took 3 months. So, and like I said, I don't, to this day, I can't tell you why they put the stipulations on my release that they did, knowing that they were going to release my class. Hell, they could have just pushed me over into that vert, but they didn't. But that's the Army. You know how that is. And it was that whole period was a interesting time for me. My time with the Eagles was a wake up, meaning that as we were talking, Sal, before, I was not Mike Mayweather, the Army's all-time leading rusher. I was Mike Mayweather, a street free agent, and treated as such. Fact of the matter is, it was a, free. If you're not, if you're not basically a first or second round draft pick, dude, you're a number, and they treat you like that. And what was interesting to me was when I got to camp, and I got to rookie camp, there were a lot of guys actually who remembered me, and a few guys there that I had played with in some of the All-Star games because I played in the Hula and Japan Bowl. And the first, what the first question was to me? It was, Mike, what are you doing here? And that was very, very, very profound to me, and I understood why, because the life of the average football player is not the average pro football player is not what people think. I mean, back then those guys were making $320,000 a year from a base standpoint, which is a lot of money for the average American. But if you're basically, most of those guys didn't live in the cities that they played. They get taxed everywhere they go, and actually my brother, I got to, when the Rams came to St. Louis, I got to know a lot of the Rams players because a few of them, again, I played with and they knew about me. And they remembered me from my days in the Army. And, and like I said, I actually got close to a couple of the guys. And, there are a lot of those guys at the end of the season. I mean, and then remember, all of the players, they literally get paid during the season. At the end of the season, that's it. So, if you haven't saved up or planned well, a lot of those guys went through the off seasons not getting checks. And and the other thing is going into the camp. My understanding was back in the day, they would give you bonuses and stuff during camp. Oh, not today, and not when I was going through. You literally made a stipend during camp, which was maybe a couple $100 a week. So it's if you're not, again, if you're not that first second, if you're not getting big bonuses, man, you're on in the thing, and that was part of the decision. That and having to deal with what's coming down the pike, having signed that contract with the Hamilton Tiger Cats, they actually had a couple of coaches in Philly's camp. I guess they were there just kind of, seeing what Philly does or whatnot or what have you. But when I left to go back to do my paperwork from the VERP, I'd actually gotten a letter from them basically saying that we still own your rights or whatnot or what have you. They didn't give me a big signing bonus when I went there, so it was probably something that could have been pretty much worked out, but I just didn't want. It was such a wake up, being in camp was such a wake up to me. And the other thing was, I 3 years out, everything from me as a player it was instinctive, and going through camp, and here's the big thing. My problem was, it was pretty much kind of a throwaway. And what I mean is, Herschel Walker was the featured back at the time, and they actually had their second round draft pick was Saran Stacy, who actually wound up not making the team. Von Hebron, he and I were at the depth chart together. We were kind of in the same area. And he actually winds up making the team, and Saran Stacy doesn't. And he just, he was an Alabama running back, running behind big country boys, offensive linemen. So that's why he was a second round pick. But the big thing for me, picking up those blitzes, man. And you know what? As a young free agent running back, if you can't pick up the blitz package, you ain't gonna see the field. And I actually, one of my issues was that running back coach there, and to this day I can't remember his name. Rich Kotite was the head coach, but that running back coach was, and I mean, he wasn't very good, mainly because he basically knew who his players were. Herschel Walker and Saran Stacy. He didn't care about what we did. It's funny during individuals for practice. Rather than everybody, all the young backs were having problems with plays and with the blitz reads and whatnot or what have you. Instead of going to the field and doing walkthroughs, doing footwork and actually doing things to help us read. What were we doing? Doing individual work. We're doing agility drills. What the hell? How the hell is agility drills going to help us make this football team? And that's what we were dealing with. And so when I walked outside, literally, and actually, my mentor, T. Bauer, we kind of sat down and talked and kind of, went through it all. And I just, at that point, I just decided to kind of go on with my life, and I just, it was, I wanted to see where I was, and time had passed me by. And as I was telling Sal before you came in, Steve, it has given me a deep amount of admiration for Roger Staubach. He did 5 years, he did his commitment, and comes back, and he's still at the top of his game. I mean, wow, it's amazing. And there have been several other players who've been able to do that commitment and still get back on the field. So, at that point, I just kind of moved on, and I do look back and wonder. I do wonder. But
if you would have got out right away,
yeah. And actually, I found out from the scouts and kind of through the process that, and see and again, it's being at West Point and not really understanding how the process worked. I actually should have gone rather than taking those. And of course, you know how the academy is about things. I played in the Hula in Japan Bowl, so I didn't go right back to school. I went to Hawaii and Japan. And the reality of it is, if I wanted to play pro football, I needed to go to the combine. And so rather than taking those 2 weeks and going to the All-Star game, which was fun, I enjoyed. I should have used that, and rather than I should have used that time and leveraged myself with the academy, because I probably, they weren't letting me go into the combine, especially after 2 weeks in the Hula in Japan Bowl. But I just didn't know. I didn't understand how it all really works. So.
Hey, real quick, Mike, I'm a little bit behind in the conversation, but I did a Google search of the 1993 Philadelphia Eagles team, and I see one William Refrigerator Perry on the roster. Did you ever go up against him in practice? I know that was old Fridge Perry, but
because what happened was I actually, because I signed and I was there for rookie camp, and then I was there for the first 4 days.
Okay.
Preseason camp, and a lot of the veterans hadn't come in yet.
Okay.
So
okay. I
did
threw out the fridge. I had to throw out the fridge reference just for the
right. Right. So
hey, real quick, We really appreciate your time. You were at the Air Force game on Saturday, Army's big win, 21-14 win over Air Force in overtime. And you had a unique perspective about Army's offense. Well, first from you playing in a wishbone style offense, right, when you were at West Point, and now seeing what they have now. And you had a unique perspective on what maybe an idea of what they should do with Tyrell Robinson, right? I mean, from what you've seen close and the talent that he has. I don't know if he kind of reminds you you see a little bit of yourself in him, but why don't you let us know about that?
Well, first thing I'll start this conversation by saying that I love what Monken has done with the football team. Actually, the biggest thing I see is that our defensive play. Nothing against you, Steve, but they are playing some of the best defensive football that I've seen at Army since I was there. I mean, they fly around, and I think what I think is it's what weight did you play at, Steve?
I played at about 230, 220.
About 240. Okay. What I think is happened. The game changed, and so back when I was there, it was about the 240-pound run stuffing linebackers. Now it's you got to be more mobile, and so I think that you got to be light on your feet. So it's not about how big you are. It literally is about your athleticism and your toughness, and that plays mightily into academy football. Through that trial period of them trying to open up and be like everybody else, what we got away from was the toughness. That I mean, it's one of the things that would happen. I enjoyed it a lot after football games, especially. Sir, you would hear the players. When you're walking up and down, I hate playing these guys, and because we just chop them down. Syracuse, actually in the I played with a few of the Syracuse guys in the Hula and Japan Bowl. They were both together, and they made it a point to tell me that they hated playing against us because all the chop blocks, because and just because they had to play for 4 quarters, and that's what Army football was about. That's what the wishbone and actually the the option offenses lends itself to. It's not about how big you are, and you don't have to be 300 pounds and bench press 300 pounds and try to move people around. Linemen are basically they're reach blocking and doing a whole bunch of different things. But I don't know. So I don't. I don't know if there's been a rule change to kind of change things. But when you look at Navy and you look at Air Force and you look at Army, they're running similar offenses. But it's not. As I was telling Sal back in the day, yeah, we ran the triple option and the double option, but we were a power running football team. 60% of the yards that I gained in my career was from tackle to tackle. So, 42s and 41s, inside traps and that kind of thing. And is his first name Terrell Rob? It's Terrell, right? Or is it Terrell or number 21? What's his first name? Can't remember what his first name is. Is it Terrell Robinson?
Yeah, Tyrell Robinson.
Tyrell Robinson.
Yeah.
And this is what I mentioned to some of my classmates on Saturday. They need to put him in the eye, pitch him the ball, put the fullback in front of him and do some ISO blocks. I mean, they need to put the ball in his hands a lot more than what he's getting, because he's a talented running back, and I actually. His first 2 years have kind of been wasted because he just not, he's shown you like the touchdown pass that he caught, and basically just beat everybody down the field. He's got the talent, and I understand why the offense works the way it does, because it does work. But man, you've got it. And what's kind of interesting is what we did. Again, our base offense was wishbone, but one of the things Coach Young did while I was there, we actually and we didn't invent it. We got it from Colorado, but we went to pretty much an eye bone where I was in the eye, broken bone. And what did we do? I mean, we ran 42. I mean, inside tackle plays, counters and that kind of thing. So,
Like I think they started giving him that inside counter play.
Right, I saw that a couple times.
That inside counter with the fullback going the opposite way.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh. I mean, he
but
had
you know what, man? Big run. Oh, that we called it 40-41 back in the day, and it was an inside stop with the guards in the center. I love that play because 20, 25 yards a pop because they're so. I'm not kidding.
Mike talking 20, 25 yards a pop.
Oh yeah. Oh man, I love that play, and it's literally because like guys like they're stepping up trying to meet us on those ISOs we're doing. The last thing they're more concerned about getting ready to take on take on Ben Barnett than they are worried about somebody coming back. So it was a great play. But you know what? I would love to see them shoot. Go double. Go power backfield and let him run inside and find his hole and use his talent. So.
Yeah, I think that what they do sometimes they're going in a shotgun formation, right? Where they might have two guys alongside the quarterback, and they either lead the quarterback a lot with the fullback. I don't know. I mean, it just
Sal? So I hate that shotgun trying to run up the middle thing. It's too obvious. And you don't really get you're coming from a 2-point stand. You can't get up enough steam from that stance, and you gotta go through there. You gotta bust through there. Earl Campbell style. You can't be playing around on the inside.
Earl Campbell reference.
That was Earl Campbell was my idol growing up. I
get it. We love it. We love it here. We love it.
There's a lot of people's idols, that's for sure.
Right. But that's the whole thing. I mean, you gotta, for instance, why is Alabama so good? They line up and they come right at you. It's down. You can't do downhill running from the shotgun. And that's what it's about. It's about downhill angle running. You're not trying to. I was, 5'7", at 5'7", 185 pounds. People who didn't really know what the wishbone was about, they always considered me a scat back. I was not a scat back. It was 5 yards in a cloud of smoke.
Yeah, just going north and south, right, Mike? Just
north and south. Right. Yeah. It's called angle running. Angle running.
Yeah, well, man, it's been great hearing your stories, Mike, and really catching up with you. It's been really awesome. Steve, do you have any other a final question you'd like to ask me?
Yeah, Mike, I just, I always try to catch up with the old grads, as much as possible. Where are you living now, and what's kind of your day to day?
Okay, well, I am in Fate, Texas. I actually grew up, and actually, when I left the military, I went back home to St. Louis and kind of was there basically until we moved to Texas. I actually was a real estate broker in the state of Missouri, and we moved here to Texas because of the demise of the real estate industry in 2007, 2008. So we moved here, gone through a few different jobs. But of course, when we moved here, I said to myself, I'd never get back into real estate again. But lo and behold, that's where I am. I actually started a real estate company again. I've been basically here in the state of Texas. You've got to be an agent for 4 years before you can get your broker's license. So I'm 2 years in, waiting to get my broker's license. I actually started my company and set it up under how they allow me to do it. But I'll really start to focus in on bringing people in when I've got my own broker's license. But in this time, I'm just kind of building a model of what I'm going to do when I'm able to get my broker's license and start to bring people in myself. So at this stage, I'm pretty much just an independent realtor focusing on buyer representation. That's my niche. So
it's awesome, Mike. And definitely, Texas is a big state. Love traveling there, so I'll have to hit you up next time I come through.
Now, Steve, you're in Colorado now, or?
Yeah. I'm in Fort Carson now. Just got here. Yep, just got here and just recently picked up majors, so I'll be going to the ILE, the majors academic course next year. So
gotcha. What branch did you go?
Infantry. So
you infantry.
Infantry. Yeah, similar like
Steve, all football players are supposed to go FA.
Yeah, Football Association. It's called FA. So, it was awesome hearing your story, Mike. Without really you knowing it, you were kind of a big kind of mentor for my class.
Really?
Coach Calwica, Ben Calwica was our defensive coordinator at the prep school, and of course, he looked up to you, and I know Pat Mealy. We had Carlton Jones as a GA for us. So
did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Carlton, right? Okay.
Yeah, so we all know.
Now was Joe Ross at?
Yeah, Joe Ross was our CEP guy at the time.
Okay.
And we just, it's just been awesome catching up with you, Mike, and just kind of growing my brotherhood a little bit bigger each time, talking to an old grad as we are now, kind of hearing where they're at, what they're doing, how they got to where they're at, and it's a really cool story, Mike.
I appreciate it, Steve. I appreciate you saying that.
Army football royalty, Steve. In a couple words, I mean, we're talking to a legend here, and we appreciate Mike sharing his story. For this interview and more, you can check our YouTube page out. Our YouTube, we just interviewed Kel Walker. We've interviewed Darnell Woolfolk. We're gonna have a lot more of the older football grads on. Old grads, sorry, Mike.
Well, you know what, Sal? I have come to respect my elder statesman status.
There you go. Yeah, this has been great. We really appreciate it, and thanks for joining us, Mike. We'll have to do this again very soon, and we really appreciate your time.
No problem. Anytime. All right, take care, Steve. Take care of your young boys there. Get them ready. All right. Good night, guys.